What's going on, guys? It's Charr here, and today I'm bringing you guys the start of a new series. Now, you might all be asking yourself, what is Marvel Rewind? And I'm here to tell you it is a Marvel Champions retrospective series. Now, I know that doesn't tell you a lot, but let's get into it and explain it a bit more. So, the first bullet we got here is what is it? So, Marvel Rewind is a progression series, and if you guys haven't seen that in different card games, maybe like through the history of Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Magic, basically in those series, they start with the first set of the game released. They usually get some randomized packs because it's a TCG, and they build a deck as they go along throughout the history of the game's life cycle. This is the same sort of idea. It's going to task me with fighting each villain in order of release. So another aspect of it is I'm only allowed to use cards released up until that wave, and the wave key is the key word in this statement. So for certain boxes, when you think of a new big box release like Rise of the Red Skull or Galaxy's Most Wanted, they usually come out and they signify the beginning of a new wave. For example, when Galaxy Most Wanted released, none of the other Guardians besides Groot and Rocket were out yet. But to kind of get more thematic, maybe some more fun matchups, I decided the cards within that entire wave that a box releases it is fair game to be used as a hero or any of their cards in the decks. Now, I will be trying to limit the amount of deck building cards I use from the wave because I feel like it kind of ruins the spirit of sort of this challenge and series. The whole idea is supposed to be how difficult and how doable are these villains when they released, as opposed to nowadays with the full card pool up until the recent X-Men expansion being Nightcrawler. The whole point is to showcase difficulty on villain release, and like I said, versus having the difficulty of the villain versus the full card pool. When you're fighting Expert Ultron using only core box cards, I will tell you the experience is much different than going in there with a fully kitted out X-Men leadership deck, that is for sure. And as we have here, we're going to go in order. So if we're talking about the core box, we're going to go Rhino, into Claw, into Ultron, and then so on and so forth. We're even going to include the scenario pack. So I think right after this, it's going to be Green Goblin and Wrecking Crew. So that's going to be a ton of fun. So why this series? Some of you may be asking. I don't think there's a ton of content based on limited/early card pools for new players getting into the game. Now, there's super great resources like Marvel CDB that you can sort by your collection, but the bottom line is people do not make decks considering limited card pools, and it's hard for people to find specific decks to really get them started, get them building, and get them defeating some of these stronger villains. You really do not need all the content in the game to defeat and interact with this game in a meaningful way. Another thing for me is that I can play as many more heroes than I normally have. I usually bounce around a couple of my favorites, and I can defeat every villain on Expert, which is something even me, myself, personally, I have not done yet. I do think it's going to be a fun exploration of how card design and difficulty over the game has evolved. I think it's going to be really interesting to see, the power of sort of these kitted out Avengers decks near the end of the Mad Titans expansion versus the really early beginnings with Captain America, everything in between, starting from the beginnings of the X-Men to the end of the X-Men, and so on and so forth. And the final bottom line of it is fun. It's going to create a lot of interesting deck building choices, opportunities. There might be some wild moments and cards turned up, seeing some combinations you haven't seen in a long time, or maybe some, new strategies or, consistencies I'm able to find with this limited card pool that builds over time. A couple examples, some cards you might be using: Enhanced Physique, Haymaker, Melee. It's a couple of the cards where when you don't have every card in the game, you have to make these choices that it's the best for the deck you're playing at the time. How will it go? Sort of like, how is this series going to go? So as I said earlier, it's going to be, the series is going to revolve around defeating every villain on Expert. They will all be fought on Expert difficulty. It is really to show, at the hardest difficulty with the card pool available at the time, how difficult are these villains. For me personally, I want to aim for mostly thematic matchups and decks. So I really want to try and get away from playing the most optimal decks in all of these scenarios. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of staples like Helicarrier, Avengers Mansion, but I want to see if I can make some decks that don't have to lean into them so hard. Now, when we're getting to the really difficult villains, I'm talking something like a Venom Goblin, an Expert Venom Goblin, and an Expert Ronin. Okay, there's going to have to be some caveats where At the time these characters released, you just have to be really realistic. If you want the best odds of winning, you need to bring a strong deck. But if we're doing some of the lesser powered heroes, I think there's really interesting design and creative deck building opportunities that will be found there. I want to be able to emulate the small card pool as much as possible. So for example, as I said earlier, we're going to be able to use every card up until the wave that villain released in, but I do want to limit the amount of cards that I can use from specific hero packs, really try and limit it to like core box and big box expansion cards, and rather than I'm going to take this specific card from Thor's pack, and I'm going to take this card from Wasp pack, and I'm going to take this card from Valkyrie's pack, and things like that. I really want to try to limit the amount of different sources of cards used in the decks. I don't know how that's actually going to manifest in the series and whether I'll keep true to that as it progresses, but I do think it will be a strong point to try and limit myself to that. And then as always, there will be a deck profile, as it's come to be common in my videos. There will be a Marvel CDB link, and you can see a slight spoiler on our first episode's deck list here on the screen, and a difficulty rating at the end. And this will also manifest in the form of a tier list. So we're going to be rating the difficulty of the villains, how difficult they are at the time they released. So for example, if you're looking at Rhino's difficulty nowadays compared to all the other villains in the games, he's going to find himself near the bottom of the list. But when you evaluate Rhino's difficulty with only the core box cards, he's definitely a bit stronger than he is with the whole card pool put in mind. And I think it'll be interesting to see how that tier list shapes up as the series goes along. Where and when will you be able to see these series? It's going to be housed right here on this channel, the Charred Gambit on YouTube. There will be uploads every Tuesday, barring some extraneous circumstances. Obviously, I'm going to try my best to get these out every week. They do have to be a defeat. I do have to defeat the villain. It might take a couple attempts, and I think I will be transparent with that, which attempt it is when I'm going in or when rating the villain at the end, how many times it took to actually defeat this villain. But I think for the most part, it will be limited just to the winning attempt when we upload it on the channel. And then also something that might be fun is feel free to join in on this challenge yourself with me, either weekly or feel free to go ahead of me. It's going to be a weekly series, and let me know how it goes for you, what kind of thematic matchups you happen to have, what kind of wild encounter cards you flip over, some random synergy you found that I didn't think of. I think it'll be a ton of fun and a really cool point of interaction on the channel for everyone. And here's just a slight week 1 teaser. We're going to have to hit it back with the classic, the core box matchup. We're going to be taking Spider-Man, Peter Parker up against Expert Rhino. Nothing more classic than this matchup. It's the matchup that everyone started learning the game with. And of course, if we're talking thematics, we just have to do it for episode 1. I hope you guys are really excited for this series. I hope you guys really understand why I'm doing it and how much fun and creative design space there really is to be found in this series. And I hope you guys will look forward to it weekly. Thanks for watching. Thanks for chilling out. As always, leave a comment down below what you're most excited for. Or feel free to leave suggestions for matchups you're excited for in the future. Maybe I'll take some inspiration for some of the choices made down there. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a great one. Goodbye.